Hey everybody, welcome to Inbound Now episode 4. Today I have with us Scott Stratton at Unmarketing. Scott is the president of his own agency, Unmarketing. He just came out with his first book, Unmarketing, Stop Marketing, Start Engaging. He's a Twitterholic, a coffee lover, and dare I say it, social media expert. So Scott, thanks for coming on the show.
Ooh, that can be taken many ways, man.
Right. That's why dare I say it. But I think you've earned the chops. Earned the chops.
Thank you.
I wanted to get you on the show today to kind of dive into some of the concepts from your new book. And then we have a fan question from you. They tweeted at Inbound Now. I'll shoot that at you.
Sure.
And then we're gonna tie some of those concepts from the book back into some real world examples that you also kind of mentioned throughout the book, which I thought was great. So let's dive into it. So why did you write a book, and who is this book for?
Well, I wrote a book because a publisher was dumb enough to give me a contract to do it, which was awesome. For me, the book is an extension of the thought, and I've always known I was going to write one. I actually picked the name Unmarketing for the company almost a decade ago because I actually thought it would look good on a book cover. I really thought it would stand out, and turn up, it actually stands out on the shelf now when you go by and see it, which is the coolest thing in the world, by the way. I know authors get kind of bored with their books, or like, is this what I do? I still think it's the coolest frickin' thing in the world to go into a bookstore and see the book with your name on it on the shelf, and then you slowly not tell somebody and you make them buy it because you see them looking at business books. But I digress. So the book, I wanted to reach kind of the masses in a way to say it's okay not to be a hypocritical marketer. It's why I started on marketing. Was we market the way we hate to be marketed to. And I didn't like that. I thought that was kind of crap. And I realized that there's different ways. Sure, there's some people in the world who wake up in the morning and they say it's a great day to cold call. And I call those people Satan. But they do it, and they go out there, and that's what they can do. That's like 1% of people in the world. And you can't train or learn to be like that. That's a natural, talent, if you want to call it that. But so many people are really good at being their authentic selves, and not a cheesy way. I'm not talking about let's hold hands and sing We Are the World together. I really mean that. You have a natural skill set. That could be writing, that could be speaking, that could be just conversations, or that can be online type of talking, and there's different ways to do it, or that could be video. Find out what you're great naturally at. Instead of trying to be good at something you suck at, be great at something you're already good at. That's the best marketing tool I think there can be.
Right. So that I noticed that was kind of the overarching theme in the book, like what you're trying to hammer into people's heads in a good way. Why are people marketing to people that the way that they hate to be marketed to themselves? It doesn't make any sense. And so with that concept, where do you think people are like moving forward?
Well, I think some people are getting it. I really think that the nice thing for the book for me was people thought it was a permission slip to be able to do what they want to do and market the way they thought would be a good way to market to. And I think social media has really allowed the natural good people to really start connecting and building relationships, because there used to be a huge barrier to entry to just talk to people, in the business world especially.
So, slight technical glitch on the recording. Sorry about that, guys. It cut out right in the middle. So, basically, the segue to this is we were talking about a Tassimo campaign run by Ogilvy Canada, where they gave Scott a free coffee maker with no strings attached. They reached out to influential people and sent them coffee makers, and the campaign was a raging success, and here's Scott talking about it.
So I tried it. And the good thing about it is I went back and wrote back. I said, hey, I love it. I started tweeting about it. I thought it was great. He wrote me back and said, I'm glad you like it. Now, we'd like to give you 10 machines to send to 10 other people that you know on Twitter in Canada. Just give us their names. And he didn't say give us their names of 10 people and we'll pick one of them as a prize. He said pick 10 and 10 get it. So now I'm like Bob frickin' Barker. I'm like, and I'm Oprah. You get a coffee maker. You get a coffee maker. You get a coffee maker. Everybody gets a coffee maker. So I got to then leverage being myself and saying, who wants one? And I got to give them away. So the difference for this was now it went from one person to 10 other people, and the buzz started being talked about. And Tassimo was before the campaign. Tassimo was being mentioned in Canada 0.04% of the time when Canadians were talking about coffee online. That's a very very specific stat. They use Radian 6 and a Canadian company as well to get all the analytics out there about it. And what happened was after the campaign, so once the sound, they were mentioned 14% of the conversation. Look at the difference between those two numbers. That is huge. That led to sales, that led to machines, and also led to me being addicted to the frickin' stuff. And I probably spent more buying the coffee now than the machine would ever have cost me in the first place.
Right, right. And I think that increased brand awareness, it does drive sales, but there's not a way to tie it directly through. They're not going to go, they're buying it in Walmart. They're not going to say, oh, I saw this on Twitter, so.
Yeah, well, and one of the things, and it does, and then people came to me and said, hey, I bought one because you talked about it, and you can talk loosely about it, but the thing is, I even hesitate to talk about this case sometimes, and I did put it in the book, but it kind of scares me to talk about it, because people will think, oh, okay, that's what we have to do. And the difference was, it wasn't even the product yet. It was how Dury, at Ogilvy, how he approached everybody at first. And he's actually a really great guy. He's a great personality. That's what opened the door. People forget, if your front person, if your main contact screws it up, none of these are getting in the door anyways. There's so much behind the scenes than just coffee makers for everybody.
Right, right. And he reached out with personal emails. It wasn't the form email, and that's right. What I thought, I think it helped it out a lot, the campaign.
Totally.
So.
100%, because we get hit all the time, and the bigger the blogger and the bigger the social media person, the more they get hit up all the time.
Right, right. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the concept of platforming. You kind of built up your Twitter following before you kind of launched your blog or did anything else within social media. So kind of elaborate on the concept of platforming.
Well, for me, anything, business in general, but even online, whether it's 2.0 or social media, there's too many choices. There's too many things where you just got so many places you've got to go. Whether you pick it, like Quora just came out and answering questions online, and Twitter and Facebook and the freaks still on MySpace and blogging, everything out there. There's so many things that you have to pick a platform first to grow it. My background, 15 years ago, I used to manage bands in Toronto, and every band wanted to play to 40,000 fans. And I told them they have to play to 40 first. You've got to start small. You've got to grow the following. You got to build your platform, like standing on a platform. So for me, I picked Twitter. I thought Twitter was the lowest barrier to engagement. So I got to start talking to people. Facebook, you had to approve friendships. LinkedIn, you had to approve contacts, usually through multiple people contacts. Twitter, you could just start talking. So I said, I'm going to use that, and I built it. But it was focus. You can't spread yourself too thin. So I didn't have a blog. I didn't have my Facebook page. All I did was January 1st, 2009, I decided to live and build a platform on Twitter. Now, I had been on Twitter for 8 months before that. And my reaction was the same reaction as most people, which was, this is stupid. Why would I want to know what somebody had for lunch? I don't care if Jeff just had tuna. It doesn't matter. And I realized, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to try it for 30 days because in marketing, our biggest sin in marketing is discounting or tossing something away for one of our clients because we don't like it. That's not the way it should work. So I said, I'm going to give Twitter a try. I know there's something here. I've been online since 94. I haven't logged off since 94. I've been doing it for a very long time. I said, I'm going to give it a shot. And I lived on Twitter for 30 days. And I tweeted 7,000 times that month. 7,000 times. You're a madman. Yeah, but if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I went from 1,200 followers to 10,000. See, people like the 10,000 follower part. They just don't like the 7,000 tweet part. They said, can't we just have the 10,000 without the 7,000? And the point is, it's not. Social media does not change the fact that relationships take time. Right. They take time and effort. And so I built a Twitter platform. I got to about 25,000 followers. Then I launched my blog. So my first blog post had a built-in 10,000 people reading it. Instead of launching it all at the same time, if I had 10 followers and I launched a blog, nobody's there. Right. So I built Twitter, and I built the blog, and then I built LinkedIn and said, hey, I don't like it, so I stopped trying to build it. Then I built Facebook. I built Foursquare. And that's, you just keep just going and going and going. And each platform, though, is like 6 months in building. It's not like I'm going to try this for a week. It takes time. You really got to put the effort and the trust.
Right, and when you spread yourself too thin starting out, it can be overwhelming. I got to do this on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, and it's like they don't have, a lot of companies don't have time to do it. So I think
especially
focusing
individuals
on one where
Yeah.
your core audience is a good idea.
Especially I think entrepreneurs too, where it's especially if you're a one person shop and you're doing literally everything for the company. I can't just sit there and say go tweet for 30 hours a week. It just won't cut it. And I know a lot of people can't live on Twitter for a month. I know they got to do things, and some people are trying to launch businesses while working for somebody else. But if you only have maybe let's say 3 or 4 hours a week you could dedicate to social media, and you're going to use Twitter. Let's say, I'd rather you spend 45 minutes a day or half hour a day every day than 3 hours once a week, because it's a continual conversation. If it takes you longer to reply to somebody's tweet than it would to be mailing them a letter, you're doing it wrong.
Right.
I had a lady, I put it in the book, I had a lady take 79 days to reply to me. 79 days. I asked her a specific question about one of her workshops. I wrote back and I said, longest wait for reply ever, like period ever, because I was being obnoxious. And she wrote back and said, yeah, I've been busy. Like, what? Are you Gandhi? Are you wandering a continent with no Wi-Fi that you can't answer me for almost 3 months? And that's the thing is, and this is what I really truly believe, if you don't have time for Twitter, or you don't believe in it, or you don't want to use it, don't have an account. It's actually worse having an account and not using it than not having one at all, because people think you're there and they just think you're ignoring them.
Right. So here's a question from one of our Twitter followers. It's from @PrinterManage. Grady and Amanda. I guess they share a Twitter account. That's pretty cute. But so basically they're asking, when you first started, doing all this like internet marketing, inbound marketing stuff, what worked and what didn't work? Kind of advice for them.
I think when I started, back in the day, I started the company 8-9 years ago. Email marketing was a different world. You had open rates of 98%, and there was no such thing as confirmation. You simply sent an email, somebody subscribed for it, and they got it. That was it. And nowadays, it's so hard to even get a newsletter to somebody who wants it. I'm sure you guys, I'm sure Upside understands all this stuff. And I'm sure you guys have the stats and the data to show this stuff of bounce rates, return rates, and non-confirming. Right. There's just so much more headache to deal with now. But my biggest mistake back then is I built a newsletter of 250,000 people in the motivational industry, and I abused the list. I really abused the list. I just pimped out products and affiliates because I was making money. And I was making coin. I could send an email out and make 10 grand just in affiliate stuff. So I didn't even have to touch anything. And the thing is, what I didn't look at was I was eroding my list. Because now the gold isn't in the list anymore. The gold is in your engagement and your trust with that list. And I'd rather have a list of 5,000 people who are my fans or my evangelists than 100,000 who just ignore me or who want to unsubscribe. And that's the scary part. And that's where my biggest mistake was. I abused my list. I abused the relationship and the following, and realized that's my community. That's just not readers. That's
right.
The community.
You definitely don't want to overwork your list, because that's kind of your bread and butter. If Twitter were to go away tomorrow, Facebook were to vanish, all these social, your in-house list is kind of, very important to your business, and exhausting that list can be a bad thing for.
I think we forget that. I think we're so busy talking about how sexy social media is nowadays, is we forget how crucial a list is still. That inbound, that whole kind of send out a newsletter, send out a blog post, send out a white paper. That's huge. That is still better return rates, better click-through rates, and because Twitter, to me, like you're talking about a Twitter addict here, right? Like the intervention is going to bust through the door any second now. But it's horrible for click-through rates. It's horrible for sales. Tweets last minutes, if not seconds sometimes. It's very labor-intensive. Right. And a list, all you got to do with a list is give them great value.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the huge difference there. And I think we forget. We're always looking at what's next in social media and what's next in marketing. We suck at now. Let's get better at now.
That's why we're inbound now. But we always talk about the future too. But
we suck at 10 years ago. We still have GeoCity sites and Angel Fire sites from back in the day that we need to figure out why people still use CompuServe and AOL email addresses. We got to fix these things before we go.
Right. But going back to like the email newsletter, I thought you did something interesting, and you mentioned in your book, every time someone signs up for your newsletter, you send kind of. It's not personalized because it's it's an autoresponder, but it is you're asking them a question. You want them to respond and tell you about their business. So
Yeah, I see so often um, when people sign up for newsletters, and one of the things I do now, we do what's called an unaudit for people, and we go through their sites and social media and sign up for everything and see what it's like. And most of the time, we get a confirmation, which is "Thank you for subscribing 15-572B5D," and that's it. It's crap, and you don't feel warm and fuzzy. Somebody just said, "Hey, I'm interested in you," and you send back, you're like, "Thanks." And they do nothing about it. You just walk away. So when somebody signs up for the Unmarketing newsletter, you go right now, go to unmarketing.com and sign up for the newsletter. You'll get an email back saying, thank you so much for signing up. I really appreciate a spot in your inbox. I know how full they can get. May I ask what line of business you're in? It helps me tailor the newsletter to my audience. That's what I say, and I really mean it when I ask it. Every single day, I get feedback from people. I'm in this industry. Hey, I'm in Brazil. I'm a dentist. Somebody just mentioned your site at a conference. Hey, I'm over here. I'm in Vancouver, and I'm actually a chiropractor. And this is how I found out about you. I'm getting like R&D daily from people. Plus, it starts conversations.
right.
And it's an amazing thing how it works.
And that's like one of the most important things, starting that initial conversation.
Right. It's not scalable. It's not totally scalable. Like when I did it with my motivational list, they got there because of a motivational movie, and I asked them, what did they think about the movie? Right, so I couldn't answer them all. I literally was getting hundreds, if not thousands or so a week, replies back from her. But it allowed me to watch and allow people to think that I was listening, and that meant a lot. And that really bonds you with the list owner much more than anything else.
Right. Okay, so another concept in the book, you were talking about how companies they bring people in, they treat their prospects really nicely and do all this stuff for them, but then once they're a customer, they kind of forget all about them or don't give them the same service, and you talk about it as the experience gap. So
Right.
so what is the experience gap, and how have you experienced it?
Well, this experience gap is the difference, and it's the gap between your worst and your best experience with a company or with a brand. And the bigger that gap gets, the easier a chance of you is walking through it, not being a customer, or the easier it is for your competition to reach through the gap and pull a customer out of it. And I gave my example of again about coffee, as you said at the intro, I'm a coffee guy, so I got a lot of coffee stories. And the big one here was for us was Tim Hortons coffee is a religion here. In Southern Ontario, I know a lot of the bordering states as well. Tim Hortons coffee is a religion here. It's a coffee chain that donuts and coffee and Canadian. And that's how it kind of works. And I was a coffee customer for Tim Hortons for almost 20 years. And again, you literally you're born into this brand. It's like being a fan of the Red Sox, the Patriots, something like that, where you live and breathe this brand. For here's the Leafs and Hortons coffee. That's how it works here. And I realized my relationship with them was kind of eroding. The gap was widening. Like the lid was kind of crappy, it would always spill in the car. My quality was no longer consistent. They didn't take bank cards, debit cards where I could pay with my bank card. The only time I ever took cash out of the bank was to buy coffee. Like it was ridiculous. That's how much I was being abused as a customer as far as I was concerned. And it kept going just a little bit eroding, and the gap opened up wide enough. So McDonald's comes out and says, hey, we want to be the new coffee place for you. And first you're like, that's ridiculous. It's McDonald's. Like I worked at McDonald's when I was 15, right? I knew who drank coffee back then. It was old people. Old people at 6 a.m. who wanted free refills. They were the coffee drinkers, not me, because I'm in denial that I'm aging. So I was not going to drink their coffee. But then they said, hey, we're going to give it away for free too. I'm like, whoa, all right, well, I'll give it a shot. And I went to a McDonald's and there was like a half-hour lineup for the coffee, which was kind of ridiculous for $1.50. So I left, but my mind was open to trying it again. And that's a huge part. That's the biggest part in marketing, again, is to open that gap up and get in there. So I went and I tried it. And I went through the drive-thru and I got my first cup. And this should be Hortons or any brand's biggest fear. One of their biggest evangels was going to the dark side. And I grabbed the coffee and the lid was awesome. I could pop it with one thumb and stick it in there and it wouldn't pop back up in my face as I was drinking it. The cup was double-walled, so it wasn't hot. The coffee tasted good, and they took bank cards. And they had as many drive-thrus for my lazy ass to go through as Tim Hortons did. And I was switched, and that was it. And it changed. People said, wow, one time you switched? No, it eroded, and the gap widened over years.
Right,
See,
and it was those small things that kind of that affected that, and the lifetime value of you as a customer is $20,000 plus, right? So
right.
It's important on every step of your customer touch points that those are kind of taken care of. And you mentioned in the book Cirque du Soleil really nails it.
Right, and Cirque du Soleil for me is I went and saw them once in Toronto. Then I went to Vegas and I went to see Ka and at the MGM there for my first time. And every step within the show, from the box office person to the person scanning your ticket to the bartender to the ushers, and then the show itself was all at the highest level possible. And there actually there's no gap whatsoever, including Twitter. Cirque du Soleil was the first brand that ever talked to me on Twitter, and I tweeted. All I said was, "I freaking love Cirque du Soleil," and I said, "COD, oh," because I paid for them. It was all my own dime, and they wrote back and said, "Thanks, we like our shows too." I was like, come on, how amazing that Cirque du Soleil was talking to me. It's amazing. And then I got to meet the person behind the account, and she was awesome. And but it's continual through it. It's like a way of living in the company, and there's no gap for me. Like, I literally looked for a gap. I do the same with Disney World. I went down to Disney World last year. I'm going down next week again. And I ran around the park looking for somebody who just didn't like what they did. I'm like, come on, there's got to be somebody who hates it. Somebody was cleaning up one of the banquets or something. I went in, I'm like, hey, do you like your job? She's like, yeah. I'm like, do you have a bad day? She's like, not really. I'm like, oh, come on.
They have to say that. No,
I know, yeah, exactly. They're all brainwashed. So the gap wasn't there, and for me that's a different, because the gap usually doesn't go because of one major event. Usually epic things don't happen. It's the little things that just keep pushing it a little until it's wide enough for you to leave. And the problem with your company is you don't know they're leaving. They just go. They won't tell you they're upset. 98% of people, I firmly believe, will never say what's wrong. They will just walk away. Right. And you have a chance, like, bring it full circle, you have a chance with things like Twitter and Facebook to see the passive peer conversation about people talking with each other about brands, not directly at the brand. You have a chance to step in.
Totally. So I think some of the, the key takeaways there is, making sure that every single touch point that you deal with a customer is optimized, and just, you don't want to lose people because of just little tiny things that build up over time. Yeah. But yeah, so where can people find you online, Scott?
Well, obviously Twitter. Unmarketing on Twitter. You can go to unmarketing.com, or the Facebook groups Unmarketing on in there as well, and of course on the bookshelves too.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, and we want to get you back on the show sometime in the future. So.
Sweet. Anytime, man.
Cool.